From Harold Washington to Harold's Chicken and everything in between and beyond, SoCHiology is the exploration of Chicago culture, history, legends, stories, and fiction through a myriad of discussions with Chicagoans themselves. If you lived in Chicago long enough, there's a high chance that at some point in time you've ridden the L train. The L train is operated by the CTA, the Chicago Transit Authority. It's the second busiest public transit system in the entire country with nearly a daily commutership of 1 million people. Now, if you've ridden the L train, there's also a high chance you've heard something like this.
Doors closing.
That voice does not belong to a computer. That voice belongs to this man, Lee Crooks. Lee Crooks is a professional voice actor and a native of Wisconsin. And on this episode of SoCHiology, I'll talk with Lee about his journey, not just the fact that he's the voice of the CTA, but how he endured the ebbs and the flows and opened himself to many opportunities to find that fulfilling feeling that all creatives seek. So without further ado, let's get right into it with Lee Crooks, the voice that moves millions. So yeah, first I gotta open this podcast up with this. I probably know the answer, but I'm hoping that I'm wrong. Are you a Packers fan?
I'm a Packers fan.
Yeah.
I grew up in northern Wisconsin. My dad was a huge Packers fan. Went to games when I was a kid. Lifelong.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of figured that was gonna be the case, So you gotta put the disdain aside, on the gridiron. So you grew up in northern Wisconsin. Now, I've never been nowhere further than Milwaukee. So
Yeah.
how far north are we talking in Wisconsin?
I grew up in Wausau, which is kind of right in the middle of the state, just slightly north of the middle of the state.
Okay.
And so we're 100 miles away from Green Bay.
Okay.
And it was a great place to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of insulated, not a particularly urban progressive place, but it was also a great place to leave because place hasn't changed a whole lot since I left. I mean, it has, but it's kind of its own little enclave up there, but I had bigger plans.
Yeah, you had bigger plans.
Yeah.
So coming out of high school, you say you wanted to pursue music.
I did.
Right? You wanted to pursue music. Let's talk about that a little bit real quick
Sure.
before we get into the nitty gritty. Like, you
Sure.
were a guitarist. You were a guitar player.
I played guitar and keyboards. I was in stage band in school. I did choir, in addition to doing acting. I did a lot of artsy sort of things when I was in high school, and really enjoyed music. Thought I had the ability to do something with that.
Mm-hmm.
Went, studied in Wausau. There's a University of Wisconsin extension up there.
Okay.
And they had actually a fairly decent music program, not a great program, but I studied with a guy from Hong Kong, studied classical guitar, music composition, things like that. Then went off to the Berklee College of Music, and that's Berkeley, Berklee, which is different than Berkeley in California.
Yeah. Okay.
This is in Boston.
Okay.
And if you look it up, I mean, it's a really well-known school, primarily for jazz and things like that. And I got out there and went, I am a very small fish in a very big pond here. And didn't see a path forward as a musician after seeing what those people were doing.
Okay.
Spent some time there, but came back to Milwaukee, studying music at the Wisconsin Conservatory for a while. And then I sort of set that aside. I became a roadie for a local band.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up getting involved in the recording industry, recording that band, and took a detour into becoming a recording engineer for about 11 years. So set music aside as a player completely.
Yeah.
But did become a recording engineer and, did a lot of recording sessions, had a studio up until about 1990. So.
And that studio, so I was actually doing a road trip through Wisconsin to Minnesota a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through this town where your studio was. And in my mind, I thought it was called Waukesha.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was called Waukesha, but that's not the
Yep.
correct way to pronounce
Nope.
it.
Waukesha.
Waukesha. Your studio is in Waukesha, and
Right.
yeah, so it's very interesting because it's kind of like when you look at life and your passions and how it unlocks certain doors that you didn't even imagine walking through.
Sure.
Your passion was music, but it sounds like it was more so maybe a hobby. Is that accurate to say, or?
I was serious about wanting to pursue it,
Hmm.
but I didn't have, I discovered when I was at college, I didn't have the finger dexterity
Mm,
and I didn't have enough good ideas to make it as a musician.
hmm.
Um, but what I did have was the ability, I had the ears and I could tell when something wasn't right, both from a compositional standpoint and playing. It was like what I really was a huge music fan
Got it.
that I could then translate that into, well, here's how this should sound.
Mm,
And this is before recording engineering became a college degree, which you can get degrees in that now.
hmm.
But I did some studying. I studied at a school in Ohio, and so as a musician I wasn't that good, but I could tell what other musicians should be doing,
Hmm.
and became a recording engineer and a producer for some records as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like, just from a sports analogy standpoint, some people aren't great athletes, but they can be great coaches.
Yes,
And that's pretty much what it sounds like it was in your situation here with the music.
that's a good parallel.
Yeah, and that's what you went into, and you did that for 10 years.
Hmm.
Again, I've read the story about the situation with that studio. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, I read that, and then so early '90s, you basically did another pivot, right?
I did do another pivot. I kind of a strange pivot. The I was still doing engineering up until 92. I was working in a publishing company, and during that time, the guy who was in the band that I became the roadie for, and then he's best man at our wedding.
Mm,
He was doing not only jingle singing, but he was doing some voiceover work.
mm,
And I could tell that recording engineering wasn't going to be a long-term viable path for making a living
okay,
in Milwaukee, maybe somewhere else, but I kind of wanted to stay in the Milwaukee, Chicago area.
okay.
And this guy was doing voiceover work, and my lovely wife said, "Well, why don't you try doing voiceover stuff? You got a good voice, and Derek's doing this. Why don't you give it a try?" And so went to Chicago,
Okay.
studied, learned how the voiceover industry worked, made a demo tape, started shopping it around, got signed immediately,
Mm.
and then they started sending me out on auditions, and one by one started winning some auditions, and it turned into a career.
Just like that. Um,
Well, not just like, I mean, it
well,
took a
yeah,
few years, but
right, right, yeah, yeah, definitely,
but
definitely. Not overnight, but the fact that so we're talking early '90s, right? And
right.
correct me if I'm wrong, please, because early '90s I was young. I was like 4 or 5 years old.
Okay.
But I remember because I'm not that old. I still remember that early '90s. This is still an era where movie trailers was all voiceovers for the most part, right?
Right, right,
It was
right.
mostly voiceovers. That's I forgot the guy Don Fontaine. I think it was.
Don LaFontaine.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's when he was dominating the industry with a few other guys. I actually watched
Hmm.
a video about him and like the top 5 guys in the movie industry that was doing voiceovers for trailers. I say
Yep,
all that to say voiceovers was heavily utilized in that time period,
it
right?
was.
So I guess what I'm getting at is to say that you got signed pretty much immediately. Was that because of the high demand in the industry? Do you think because like it was so many places to fill voiceovers into, or like did you just really just you caught a good one? Like what do you think it was at that point?
Um, I think I may have just caught a good one.
Caught a
You
good
know, I had a lot of people when I had my recording studio, whatever my voice sounded like, is what it sounded like.
Mm-hmm.
And our recording studio was not just music, it was also doing production work for commercials, things like that.
Okay.
Mostly music, but we did some stuff. And I had a producer stick me behind the microphone at one point. He
Mm.
said, I want you to try to do this spot. This is about, I'm going to say 1985, 1986. And I said, okay, fine. And he gave me a script and I crashed and burned because I didn't know what I was doing.
Mm.
I may have had the instrument, had no idea how to play it. So that just sort of stuck in the back of my mind that, well, I've got this instrument, but I didn't really do anything with it. And then in the early 90s is when that's when I started pursuing it. So I think the change was I learned how to play it.
Okay.
And had a really good teacher, a guy named Ray Van Steen, who is now he's down in Dallas. He's retired. And I I think I may have just been in the right place at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Before, voiceover is a very competitive industry now. Everybody who has a USB microphone and a laptop calls themselves a voiceover
Yeah.
or can call themselves voiceover, and a lot of people do. They may not have had the training, they may not have had experience, but they're hanging out the shingle. And whereas when I started, there were a few thousand of us in the country
Mm.
doing it. That's including the coasts,
Yeah.
Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas. Now there's literally hundreds of thousands of people calling themselves voiceovers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a little bit of the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that because now anybody can do like we're doing a podcast right now. Those are
Right.
voiceovers. But the proper teaching is what separates those who could get to the next level versus those who are
Yes.
just like in the pack. What are some things that you learned then that you believe are is still relevant now when it comes to voice acting? Like because your voice is how you make your money. So
Right. Right.
it's more than just drinking water. What are some things that you learned?
Some of the things that I learned is you are delivering a message. You are not just reading words. Sounds basic, but you'd be surprised how many people don't get that who are calling themselves voiceovers.
Hmm.
Uh, it's certainly the way a lot of people who aren't in the industry view it. They go, well, it's just reading words. Okay, well, read this menu, make it sound interesting.
Mm,
Blah 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 blah, and monotone, whatever. It doesn't sound interesting.
yeah.
You need to deliver a message. It's acting, is what it is. It whether you're doing a radio promo, or you're doing a commercial, or you're doing a. I do a lot of narration work. For instance, thing I did this morning was how to install a toilet.
Interesting. How do you
Yeah.
make that sound interesting and captivating?
Well, you need to make it, you have to find that, in that case, I had to find the balance between um, making it sound interesting and engaging, but not too much because then it sounds phony.
Yeah, yeah.
So, for this installation, you will need the following tools and materials. And, I list the materials. So it needs to be friendly, informative, not too over the top. Use the remote control to test the functions of the toilet because it's an electronic toilet. It's a real
Oh,
high-end toilet, so, but it's what to do with those things. And you need to know what's appropriate for each thing that you're doing. So, if I'm doing, shopping at Pool City, it's going to be a little bit different than if I'm installing a toilet. So,
right, right,
so you
right, right.
need to
Discern.
you need to discern, you need to bring the appropriate interpretation to each thing.
Hmm.
And what's fun about voiceover versus on camera acting is for on camera acting, you may have time to study the part, create a backstory, create that character that you're doing. Whereas with voiceover, you have to bring it now. So you have about 10 seconds to decide what you're going to do with it. If it's not right, the director will say, well, let's try something else.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to come in prepared to catch that frisbee wherever they throw it.
Mm.
So if they want a high energy thing, you got to be ready to bring that high energy. If they want something small, a little lighter, a little more intimate, you need to be able to bring that right away. So, a lot of the skills that when people have asked me how to do voiceover, because I get people asking me that all the time.
Yeah, I bet.
Um, I think a lot of it is people skills, being able to talk to somebody one on one, really listen to what they're asking you to do. Because I have been in sessions where I'm not the main voiceover,
Okay.
and I'll have some young guy with me who will go, he'll be listening to the director. Yeah. Okay, great, got it. Which is completely insulting to the director.
Mm.
It's like, shut up and listen.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to what they're saying, and then internalize that, and then deliver it. And if it's not right, they'll tell you. You can ask questions, but respect the person whose project it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Respect. That's a big thing, and that's why we have
yeah,
two ears and one mouth. You got to listen more than you speak.
exactly.
So yeah. Let's fast forward to 1997. All right,
Sure.
let's get to the good stuff. Not saying that wasn't
Okay.
good. All of that is valuable information. Don't get me wrong, but
Sure.
you know, we want to know about what we're here for. Okay, so 1997, your agent told you to audition for this.
She did.
Your agent told you to audition for it. This is why having agents is very good, people.
Hmm.
And you went to Chicago to audition for a particular job.
I didn't. I actually recorded it here.
You recorded it up there, okay?
Yeah.
Wow. So you recorded it at your studio. That's what you did.
Yeah. And at that point, it was a real, this is a fairly complex studio now, but at the time, it was a pretty fledgling studio.
Okay.
And that particular one, I'm pretty sure I did record at home, which was not the norm at that
Mm,
time.
mm.
Um, I may have recorded it on a 4-track cassette, to be perfectly honest. I think that's maybe what I was using at the time.
On a cassette.
I think.
Okay.
I'm a little unclear on that, so
It was
but
'97.
I don't recall actually going in to record
Okay.
that particular audition.
Okay. Okay.
My
So
recollection is I did it at home.
so
So
you did it at home, but we do know for a fact you was not in Chicago. You was not in Chicago when your agent told you to audition for this gig. You was at home. But
right.
I do want to mention. I'll be remiss if I didn't mention a very important detail. I believe is
Yeah,
you had just came back from vacation before this,
that is correct.
which is probably this is what helped you strike gold. Uh,
Yes.
I've never been to Disney World, but
Right.
you said that you just had this idea to mimic that voice.
That's
Like this
correct.
was your idea, and like so, walk us
Hmm.
through that thought process because
Sure.
you didn't want to just do it in the voice that you normally had been using, or you chose to do this voice. Why was that?
Um, we had been on the monorail at Disney World, and so they wanted a train voice. So I had to go, okay,
Is a train
what's a
voice.
train voice? And first thing that comes to mind is the next stop is, but somebody, talking over a crappy little speaker. And I'm thinking, hey, that's not what they want because otherwise they wouldn't be doing this. So where have I heard a train? I heard one on the monorail. So how did that guy sound? And he was the guy who was doing it, I'm pretty sure was the same guy who was at that time doing all the Disney trailers as well. So he was doing the movie trailers, and his name is Mark something.
Hmm.
Um, and so I went, okay, this guy's sort of doing a friendly
Hmm.
tour as you're going on the monorail. So, welcome to the Disney monorail. On the left is the Contemporary Resort, and over here is the Magic Kingdom. And,
Yeah.
and, but I had to take that sort of friendliness and bring it down to whatever words they wanted me to say, which was, this is State and Lake, you know. So I basically just did an imitation of that guy's style
Yeah.
with the words that they provided me with.
And they provided you with everything, right? Like
For the
every
audition, we did number of streets. We did some announcements, you know, no smoking, drinking, gambling, card playing, whatever,
all of that. Right.
on CTA trains. And so we did a few of those,
Hmm.
and I sent it off to my agent, who sent it off to the CTA.
And it was like, yeah, we this is who we want. This is who we want.
I didn't hear anything for 6 months.
I would have forgot about it.
I did forget about it. I did forget about it.
Yeah.
And and then one day my agent called me up and said, so you remember that CTA thing you auditioned for? They want to hear a little more, but I think you got the gig.
Great
And
news.
I'm like, say what?
Yeah.
And so I had to record a little more. They wanted to hear some more stuff, and I did, and I'm still doing it.
Still doing it. Like 97 was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
We're coming up on 2027 just soon.
Yeah,
So that's 26 years, and
yeah,
that's huge. That's huge, Lee. And it's like, when you, cause like as far as I can remember, I don't remember CTA not having your voice. Like I'm really trying to think.
okay,
Like as early as I can remember riding the CTA, I was like probably 9, 10. That sounds about right. And I'm like, yeah, it's the same
yeah,
voice. The trains have changed, the buses have changed, but the voice is the same. Like what was it like recording all? Because Chicago's a huge city, so you
yeah.
doing all of the train lines, red, blue, green. You're doing all the buses too, and that's a lot. Like
What
how?
we did was, the first recording session was 2.5 days.
Okay.
It was pretty much solid 6, 8 hour days. Um, my voice has gotten a lot older now, and I couldn't handle a day like that anymore.
Mm,
It just, age does some things to you, but
yes.
we, at the time, we recorded pretty much 8 hour days. So, but 2.5 days at a studio called Trackwork Orange that doesn't exist anymore. It closed a couple years after we did the first recordings.
Oh wow.
Um, and it's on tape, so 1/4 inch tape.
Mm-hmm.
And we sort of set the the template for how we approach these during those sessions. So for every recording, every announcement, let's say it was Fullerton, and that's it. We recorded 3 times,
Okay.
and then the director would say, okay, let's try doing 3 different versions of that, a little higher sounding, a little lower sounding, because they wanted to have options when they went back to
Of
to
course.
editing,
Yeah.
to try to make something that was, as they said, a seamless, consistent sound for these things. So, and they didn't know exactly how that was going to happen. So we recorded each announcement at least 3 times. Some of them we recorded as many as 15 times.
Mm.
And so when it took 2.5 days, and we didn't do all the pink line didn't exist at that time.
It did. Oh, okay.
No.
Mm.
Um, we did that later, and we only did the trains initially. So
Not buses.
yeah, it was just the trains. The buses were added. I'd have to look in my session database
Mm-hmm.
to see when the buses were added, but the buses were added years later.
Mm.
So we did all those, and then we would do some updates, um, both changing the way something was said. Like, for instance, we had a problem with the technology back then was very small, um, memory cards that were in at least 8-bit technology. The engineer used to claim it was 4-bit technology. I'm not sure that's correct.
Hmm.
but he claimed it was 8-bit technology with a low sample rate because they were trying to save space on these cards. And every card, my understanding was, is triggered by a central computer on the train.
Okay.
And so each one of these cards exists in every car. You think it's just um, audio cables, like there's a
Yeah.
central thing that, and it's playing through all the trains. No, it's actually triggering the card in each of the cars, is my understanding.
Wow. Okay.
Not positive about that. But so every time they had to change an announcement, it was a huge deal because they had to change it on all the
Everything.
cars.
That's a lot of cars.
That's a lot of cars.
A lot of cars.
So, they didn't take it lightly. They wanted to get it right the first time.
Right. Right.
And so then same kind of technology in the buses, except for obviously there's only one bus, so but they had those memory cards
Mhm.
in the buses as well. Different company. The first company was a company out of Germany, I guess, that did it. And the company that does the buses to this day is a company, I think they're in New York.
Okay.
That's the technology company that
Gotcha.
makes the equipment.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
So,
Okay. So yeah, you did the trains first. Did the buses came later? How many times, like whenever they add a new stop, or for example, now they're about to extend the red line, so now
right.
it's no longer you are riding the red line train from Howard to 95th. It's no
Hmm.
longer that. Like you're gonna have to, how often do you have to go back and do updates, or things?
Yeah, I've been asked that question quite a bit. We do updates on average 3 times a year.
Okay.
Now, I've already done 3 updates this year and been told there might be another one coming before the end of the year.
Mm,
During the pandemic, I think 2020, I don't think I updated at all,
okay.
but it works out to about 3 times a year.
And when you do these updates, you're just doing what's being added, or like you have to do everything again.
Oh, no, no, just what's added.
Just was that okay? That's what I figured.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
ask.
I mean, I've done sessions not recently, but I've literally done sessions where it's one line
One line. Oh, that's so
and
cool.
so that it because in April, well, I think we did more than one line, but the main thing was there had been some fights breaking out on things and
Mm.
on trains or buses, and so we created an announcement saying you're being watched, and we will prosecute to the fullest extent of the law.
Yeah.
Um, which I was a little surprised that hadn't been done before, but I guess we hadn't needed it before,
Uh,
but
uh,
so we did that. But I've done one line. I just did a session 3, 4 weeks ago where we did 52 announcements for various things.
52. And
That
how
was
long would
both.
that
I'm
take?
pretty sure that was both bus and train.
And how
So
long would those 52 announcements take you on average?
that session, give me a second because I keep this stuff I do have a session database.
Very well organized. I love it.
I try to be.
I need to get better myself.
The session I did on June 28th was, oh no, that session was 5 announcements. This
Okay.
was 55 announcements, and that took me 2.5 hours.
2 hours for 55 announcements. So you basically got paid for 2 hours worth of work to say 55 sentences.
2.5 hours, yeah.
Three. Oh,
Yeah, 2.5 hours.
not bad. Not bad.
And then I also do the engineering on it now. Used to have a gentleman who was integral to the whole process. He was there from the beginning. I think he retired. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but so because I was a recording engineer, I took over doing all the recording for it as well.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Might as
So,
well.
I do all the editing, I process it, create the files that the CTA uses.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, and this is yeah, so it's like, it all started because you got creative. You got creative in the beginning because you was like, you know what? thank God for Disney World. Thank God for Disney World to plant that seed
Exactly.
in your mind because
Very grateful.
yeah, yeah, because I'm sure like you're literally probably the only one that came at it from that angle.
Could be.
Probably, and that really landed you a long term relationship with a very large organization in the third
Yes.
largest city in the country that moves millions of people every single day and they don't even know about it. And again,
Hmm.
I'm a nerd because I like to know things behind everything. I want to know why things are the way they are. And it never really dawned on me until I was in adulthood. Like, who is that? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
who is that? We live in a world where AI is taking over. You got GTP, all of these things, but AI is only AI because it comes from humans, right?
Right.
It's artificial
Exactly.
intelligence. So I was thinking, I'm like, if this is a recording, it has to be someone's voice that they got this recording from,
Yes.
and I wanted to find out who that voice was, and I found that voice. And I also read that for a long time you didn't want to be known as the CTA guy.
That's correct.
You didn't want to be typecast. Why is
Hmm.
that? You thought you was just going to be relegated to just doing voices for public transit systems. Is that why you wanted to do more things?
That wouldn't have been a bad thing, except for it wouldn't have made much of a career.
Okay.
The reason for it was I was still trying to get my voiceover career. It was established, but it wasn't where I wanted it to be. And this is a very specialized voice. I, I don't talk, you know, doors closing. I don't do that, in normal everyday
Right,
life.
right, right.
And I didn't want that. I was trying to get I was doing a lot of narration work, but I was trying to get my foot more in the door with the ad agencies and doing commercial work and things like that. And I didn't want my name associated with that voice as the first introduction to what I can do.
I understand. As
So
a fellow
when
creative, I understand that.
yeah, I wanted them, if they brought me in for an audition, I wanted them to hear what I was able to give on their script as the first thing. Because if they said, well, we don't want Lee Crooks because he does that, he sounds like that train thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, you haven't even given me a shot. You haven't even brought me in to get a chance to try doing it.
yeah.
So until I felt like I was pretty established, um, I didn't tell anybody. It was it's sort of like the voice of Siri. The current voice of Siri does a lot of different things. But if they think that's all she does, then no, well, that's not the kind of voice we want.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
she can also do cartoon characters.
Mm,
So give her a shot. You know, see what the person can do before you make a judgment about it.
yeah, yeah. Don't
And
want to
that's
be
why I kept
typecast.
it secret.
Understood, understood. And it paid off for you. That was a very great decision because you've done a lot of things. What
Thanks.
Chevy? You did Chevy,
I did some Chevy
and
stuff.
Chevy
Yeah.
is a totally different vibe from
Oh,
CTA.
yeah.
Because like the commercials I see, they be like rough and rugged Silverado. My voice acting is
Exactly.
terrible, so please, don't.
No, it's,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's a whole different macho type of vibe. So your decision
right.
to keep it quiet actually paid off because yeah, if an exec at Chevy would have knew what you did, they would have like, oh no, we don't want the Lion King. you know,
Yeah.
we don't want Beauty and the Beast. We want the Beast. That's
Right. Right.
yeah, yeah. So I definitely understand that thought process. But you're still doing CTA, and it's like, why would they want to switch up? Because it works, and you do. Correct me if I'm wrong. What's the other line that you do the voice for?
Buffalo.
Buffalo, New York.
Hmm.
Oh, okay, all the way up there. I've never been to
Yep.
Buffalo, New York. Mm,
And an interesting thing, we're talking about AI. Years ago, probably 11 years ago, I did a text to speech company.
okay.
Um, so I recorded thousands of lines for this company. I got very nicely paid. It wasn't, and they were selling my voice to phone systems, various things. Um, went through an agent on that, and they negotiated a very nice contract. And it hasn't affected my business really. I'm glad I did it. But we were in JFK last year,
Okay.
and I swear, in the terminal near where the trains connect to the terminal, not in the trains,
Uh huh.
but we're
But the terminal.
in the terminal, it's my voice. Because my wife and I were walking to take a train, to go somewhere, and we're listening, and we're like looking at each other going, that's gotta be me.
That's you. And
Yeah,
you
my
know
wife
it's you. It's
immediately
you.
picked up on it.
It's you. Like,
Yeah, and so they probably licensed my voice from this company,
mm.
so
And do you
I,
get
th- I
royalties
think
on
I'm in
that?
JFK as well, but
Do you get royalties on that, or is that like already negotiated?
no,
Elsewhere.
they paid me handsomely up front.
Okay.
And actually, that's not true. I did get this past year, I did get a royalty bump that my agent negotiated for something. I'm not sure what they negotiated, but I did get an extra check for that
Oh,
this
life is
past
good.
year. But
Life is good. Life is
yeah,
good.
it
It's
was
very
good.
good. What other things are you doing currently though outside of CTA?
Right now, like I said, installation videos for a plumbing company. Um, I do a lot of installation kind of videos. I guess I'm able to explain stuff in a way that people can follow without too much difficulty. Let me look at my
The
let's
database.
see. Last week I did part of a social studies textbook for, I think, eighth graders.
Mm,
I have been the voice of a uh, trucking company, and I'm talking truck manufacturer,
okay.
all of their technician videos. I've been doing that since about 2003. And so I do a lot of that. Let's see what else.
You have a lot of long-term partners.
I
That's
did for another podcast, I did a bunch of liners,
mm,
award shows kind of thing, so like an industry, a company will have, there's a pharmaceutical company, they do awards, um, internal awards
hmm
awarding their employees for doing good work. And there's a bunch of us, male and female, who do their award show.
okay.
So I do that kind of thing. What else?
Staying busy.
Phone systems. Yeah, do a few phone systems.
hmm Staying
So
busy. Staying busy. The voice is staying busy. Like you got to keep the voice healthy. What do
I'm
you do?
trying.
Like you drink a lot of tea. Like how do you?
I drink a lot of tea. I drink a lot of water,
Of
you
course.
know, constantly. I spend some time. I'm still a little rough from, I don't know if you want me to mention this, but, I had some lumbar shots in my back because I don't have a great back.
Okay.
And the cortisone traveled to my voice, and it messed up my voice for a few days. Still feeling the effects of it today.
Mm,
And that was a week ago.
yeah. Yeah. And of
But,
all things, the voice. Of all things,
yeah,
what bothers the voice.
of course.
Like.
But it's happened before. I just didn't think about it.
Mm,
And then next day, I sounded like an old man. I couldn't even talk and we had to reschedule this because
we did. We
I
did.
couldn't do it on Thursday.
We did.
And this is what I sounded like on Thursday, so
Man.
it's still there. It's better, but
hmm
I'm still not 100% yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. You throughout the years, like when you run into things like this like something that's put in the contract, like, my voice has to perform. If my voice doesn't perform, like, can the client reschedule with you, or do they be like, oh, we don't need you anymore? Like, how does that work? Because
depends on the session.
yeah,
I've had both. I've had people say, we'll wait. We really want to use you. Take care of yourself, get better. We get colds,
yeah. You are
things
human.
happen.
You are human.
And yeah, I'm human. And Sometimes they go, no, we got to get this done today. It's got to be on the air by Thursday.
Mm,
We're gonna have to move on. And that's the biz.
yeah, it just has.
I have a client who I'd been working with for a long time, and I had a cold for 3 weeks, and they actually got angry with me. And I'm like, I can't do anything. I'm sorry, and I haven't worked for them in a year and a half. I think they got ticked. It's just, that's how some people handle things. So it's the biz.
Yeah, it's how the dice rolls. But
Yeah,
for every one client like that, I'm sure you have multiple others that have the patience and understand it. Again, you are human, but a sore throat is your worst enemy, um,
right, right.
without a doubt. When you
And
were
most of my clients are very cool about that stuff.
Yeah,
So
as they should. I mean,
yeah,
like when you told me you had to reschedule. I mean, how am I gonna be like, oh,
yeah.
I appreciate you letting me know. But
You would not have liked to listen to me on Thursday last week when we
uh,
were originally scheduled. It was
it would have been
terrible.
very, very raspy. When you was recording for CTA, what were some things that you? Because obviously you're not a Chicagoan. Technically, you are
Right.
Milwaukeean, Wisconsin. I'm not sure
Hmm.
the term. What were some things that you learned about Chicago with the process of recording for CTA?
Well, for starters, I learned what a cool city Chicago is. I
Hmm.
mean, I had been trying to work in Chicago, and I'd been driving down um a lot
Hmm.
to establish myself in Chicago.
Yeah.
But the people in Chicago are so friendly, so welcoming. Little bit of an attitude, but
Of course.
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, yeah,
I like that. I like that attitude. I like that, hey, we got it covered.
yeah,
We got it under control. I like that a lot.
yeah.
Um, I've run into more jerks in Milwaukee than I have in Chicago.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
just and I don't know why that is. I mean, it's not a huge thing, but it's um people kind of it's that little bit of a superior Midwestern sensibility.
Hmm.
But in Chicago, it's softened a little bit with I don't even know what to call it. There's just a friendliness in Chicago
Hmm.
that is wonderful. I would say that friendliness is also in Milwaukee. It just seems there's a handful of people in Milwaukee that I've run into
Hmm.
who seem like they think they're bigger than they really are.
Hmm.
I'll just leave it at that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's, we're talking very small numbers, but I would say the numbers are even less in Chicago.
Hmm.
Everybody's been really welcoming in Chicago. Um, the number of things you can do in Chicago is just wonderful.
Yeah.
There's so many, I would love to get down to Chicago more, between plays and music. The parks are wonderful. I'd love to get down there more often, but I since the pandemic, I've been down there very seldom,
Hmm.
and I miss it.
Yeah.
You
It's right
know,
down the street. It's right down the
yeah.
street. Yeah.
The pandemic changed so many things. Most of my recording sessions now, even when I'm with a recording studio, are from here to another recording studio, as opposed to I used to drive down 3 to 5 times a week. I
Hmm.
put a lot of miles on my car,
Yeah.
and I rarely drive down now.
Mm.
It's there's a thing called Source Connect, which is internet, or it's audio over the internet.
Okay.
And so I do a lot of Source Connect sessions to recording studios in Chicago or anywhere else in the country.
Yeah.
Or we'll even have producers over the phone. A lot of sessions are over the phone. They trust me as a recording engineer to give them a good product, which I always do. But B, um, I guess it's cheaper for them to not have me come in.
Yeah.
So I miss the social aspect,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is wonderful in Chicago.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite restaurant down here? Favorite food down here?
I have one restaurant that I've been to a lot, and probably because it used to be There used to be a recording studio right above it, where I did, I said I did some social studies stuff. I used to
Uh-huh.
record all this publishing stuff at this recording studio on Grand called Echo, EKO.
Okay.
It's not there anymore because same thing with the pandemic, everything went virtual.
Mm,
There's a restaurant called Volare on St. Clair and Grand,
mm,
Italian food.
okay.
Love it.
Can't say I heard of it, but I'm gonna add it to my list.
Yeah, it.
I'm gonna add it to my list.
Yeah, they're good.
Mm. And you said
That's
it's
probably
Italian food.
yeah,
Yeah, I love Italian
yeah,
food. I love pasta. I'm a heavy carb guy. I like to run a lot, so it helps me
yeah.
out in more ways than my taste buds. But yeah, I'm gonna add that to my list. Thank you for the recommendation. You said you was doing the textbook, so that segues into my
Hmm.
next question real quick.
Sure.
How many book narrations have you done? Audiobooks, things like that. Have you dabbled into that realm a lot or no?
I dabbled into it a little bit, and about 2015, 2016, I was kind of playing around with it.
Okay.
The reason I haven't gotten into it is because doing audiobooks is a marathon. You have to be able to record probably 3, 4 hours at a crack and still sound pretty much as fresh as you did
When you started.
3 hours ago at the end of it. As I've gotten older, my voice doesn't want to do that so much anymore.
Yeah.
And so I unfortunately I start getting a little raspy after a couple hours.
Mm,
And audiobooks, when they send you an audiobook to record, they want it back pretty quickly. I mean, pretty quickly is maybe 2 weeks,
okay.
but when
I
you
thought you was gonna say
have,
a day, like 2 days or something. I'm like, hold up.
oh, no, 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 no.
Oh no.
Because once you're done recording it,
Yeah.
then you have to edit it. And there are people who will do editing separately, but you have to pay them. Or if you're a narrator and an engineer like I am, you can edit yourself.
Hmm.
But I guess the rule is for every hour of audio is 6 hours of editing. Cleaning up things and getting mouth noises out. And you do retakes.
Popping
So you got to
peas. Yeah.
popping peas. You got to get all that, any retakes out. Um, as you listen, you're also proofreading. So you want to make sure you didn't miss any words or switch words around. It's a real marathon and it doesn't pay as well as you would think.
Mm.
So
Wow.
I sort of, after really exploring it, I sort of abandoned that.
Hmm.
And the key factor was being able to narrate for a long time. I used to be able to go for 4 hours and still sound really good. As I've gotten older, it doesn't work as well.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
can sound good for short bursts,
So yeah, yeah. You're a
but
sprinter. You're a sprinter, not a
I'm
distance
now a
runner.
sprinter. Yeah,
Yeah.
marathons are kind of over.
Yeah.
Um, I got a couple small things on Audible, but when I do the textbook sort of things, usually what they let me do is for the first hour, they're on the phone listening in and giving directions. And then they're like, yeah, you got it from here. So I can record as long as I sound good, stop, take a break, come back an hour later, record another hour. I don't have to have the client there. They trust me for what I'm going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Your reputation precedes you. That's why. And this is kind of like a personal question because I've written two novels, working on my third,
Ah,
and the time has come where I can no longer escape avoiding the audiobook portion.
ah,
The demand has gotten too high. One of my mentors told me it's time. So I'm about to prepare to record the audiobook for my first novel as I'm
okay.
writing my third novel. Um,
Excellent.
and I just been dreading it. I've been dreading it. It's just like you said, it's a marathon. That's what I've already
Hmm.
been thinking in my head. Like, I don't know if I can really do this. I mean, I know I can, but it's like I don't know if I want to do it, but I got to do it.
Do you have a lot of characters?
Yes.
Okay. Probably don't want to tell you what to do, but probably get somebody who can do and differentiate a lot of characters,
Hmm.
male and female. Doesn't have to be cartoon voices where every character is completely different,
Hmm.
but you want to give a flavor of something to each character and somebody who can differentiate that sort of thing. If you think you can do that, go for it.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
definitely was thinking about the outsourcing
yeah,
option because it's like, whoo, all these words, like 80,000 words isn't that much, but 80,000 words is still 80,000 words. Obviously, of course, you're grateful to be working with CTA still to this
yes,
day and that your voice is
very.
still heard throughout the city of Chicago. But what are some other things that you take away from that experience that, your kids or grandkids, if you have any, that you could tell them stories and like what brings you joy outside of the obvious. Like,
What it I guess what I would say is it made me feel like a legitimate player, as opposed to a perpetual wannabe
mm,
trying to,
yeah,
and I still have that. I still want to do more with my career, but it gave me at least a feeling like, okay, I've accomplished something that I can point to, and it feels good, it. But the CTA is such a small part of what I do. It's just the most visible part of what I do.
yeah.
Because most of what I do, people don't know it's me.
Yeah, no one's like watching a toilet installation video just to
No,
watch it. No one's
right?
just coming, oh
No,
yeah, put on this toilet installation video. See, no one's
no.
doing that. Yeah, so I definitely understand. Just for point of clarity, the reason why I asked because as a fellow creative,
Yes,
I'm not a voice actor, but I use my voice. My
sure.
voice, carries both of these podcasts. I'm a public speaker, all of those things. You know, we all battle this, issue of, like you said, do I deserve to be here? Like, am I good enough?
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, imposter syndrome. There we go.
Hmm.
We all battle imposter syndrome, even more so as creatives, because
Yep,
the creative world is so huge and it's so cluttered. Like you said, everybody with a microphone is a podcaster or a voice actor
yep.
now. Everybody with a camera is a photographer now. So it's like,
Hmm.
what can I do to set me above the rest? And for me, is when I had landed my first Fortune 500 client. So when I had landed them, I'm like, oh, this is a global organization. You know,
Hmm.
maybe I am starting to be worthy. Even though
Yep,
it shouldn't take that, but that's like the affirmation on that external side of things.
yep.
So that's the point of clarity I was asking as far as like CTA because it is such a huge organization and so much money, so many people going through it. That's probably what I was asking. Like, was that probably it for you as a creative?
It it went a long way. I one of the things I really wanted to do was a lot more national commercials, and I've done some.
Okay.
I I never have nailed that end of the industry. That was sort of the holy grail for me, trying to,
Mm,
break into the doing regular national commercials. Had some success with Chevy. What else did I do? Um, Done some stuff for Kellogg's, things like that,
okay.
but never really, never hit that the way I wanted to. However, I had the CTA, and I've got regular clients who use me in the narration end of things for training films and whatever, that I know that there's other people who would be so grateful to have the same opportunity. So sometimes you have to be very happy with what you've got.
Mm,
And while I was pursuing this thing, all these other things came into being,
mm,
and they were great.
mm,
And it took me a while to go, yeah, this isn't happening, but look what happened. This turned out great.
yeah.
So it's also being aware of what's going on in your life, and stopping to smell the roses and being grateful for what you got. And so the CTA in a way legitimized what I was doing, but so did all this other stuff. It just took me a while to realize it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
sometimes we focus so much on one thing, and like we can't even see all the great things materializing, outside our field of view. All we gotta do
Right.
is just turn our head on the swivel. And
Yeah, I didn't set out to be a voiceover when I came out of high school. That I mean, I didn't even know what a voiceover was at that point.
mm,
And here I am, and this is what I do now. So, when those opportunities come, take them, enjoy them. They may take you in areas that you never thought you were going towards. And it's a fun journey.
yeah, yeah, it is. It is. It is.
It
And
is. Sounds like you've got some good things going too.
doing my best. I'm doing my best. Everything you just said, you just gave me a whole sermon right there. Just don't fixate so much on certain things. Just enjoy the opportunities that's happening naturally, around you.
I think in this world we live in now, that's what it takes to be successful. It takes a certain enthusiasm for life,
Yeah, yeah,
and you certainly have it. She certainly has it. I like to think I have it. You know, so if I was going to advise somebody, it's like, look around you. There's so many opportunities. There's so many wonderful things going on in the world. And Chicago is a great place to do it.
yeah.
Chicago is, there's so many opportunities there.
Many.
You just have to look for them. And if you need some ideas, just ask somebody. They'll give you ideas on things that need to be done
Yep.
or can be done.
If you enjoyed this podcast, whatever platform you're listening to it on right now, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, etc., leave a 5-star review and a comment. Let us know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe to our sister podcast, Mogul Motivation, from True Stories Media.